You last week when you were here for jury selection that this is going to be a sad case. And obviously we have a lot of spectators here, we have a lot of emotions here, and I need you to remember what your oath is, which is to follow the law, presume that he's innocent, hold the state to their burden of proof beyond all reasonable doubt. Don't be distracted by the dynamics of what's going on in the courtroom in this case. The government in any criminal case has to prove two things. They need to prove first that a crime was committed, and they need to prove secondly that Mr. Jones, the person they've decided to prosecute, is the perpetrator of the crime. They need to prove both of these two things beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt. And what they'll do in this case, this first thing that they have to prove that a crime was committed, they will succeed in proving this to you. They will succeed in proving to you that the night of this case, when this burglary happened, there was two men in the home of Mr. Simpson. He came home, he surprised them, he scared them. They fled into his bathroom in the master bedroom. He chased after them with the first thing probably he could grab, which is this flag, this big pole. He cornered them in the bathroom, and you'll see pictures of the bathroom itself. You'll see that there's a very small window in the bathroom that would have been extremely difficult to get out. And a confrontation ensued. And he was murdered in his own home. And it's an extremely horrible thing that happened. And I need you to set aside your emotion. The law requires that you set aside your emotion and be objective in this case. Look objectively at the evidence in this case. And I tell you that they will succeed in proving to you that a crime happened, that a horrible crime happened, that a very sad thing happened. And there's going to be this second thing that they have to prove beyond all reasonable doubt. They have to prove beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that it was Mr. Jones who committed this horrible act. And when you follow the law, and I'm confident that you will be objective and you will set aside this dynamic that's here in the courtroom today and all week, you set aside the drama of this case. When you remain objective in this case, you are going to find that they will fail to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that it was Mr. Jones that was the perpetrator of this crime. As you sit and listen to the evidence, keep in mind probably one of the most important things is that there is no conclusive, solid, scientific, reliable evidence that puts Mr. Jones in that home. This was a big case when this happened. The media was all over it. The police were all over it. The neighbors were trying to help. Everyone was trying to help. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. My point being there is Darius Robinson, the state's star witness in this case, that they will admit to you, and they have to admit, this is a liar and a thief and a murderer. And he is their star witness. And he is not just a liar. It is atrocious how many lies this man has told. He's completely unbelievable. Upwards of 45 lies, if you count them, and I hope you do. And these are the lies that that he will have to admit to. Lies like, I wasn't there. Lies like, I didn't go in the house. Okay, I did go in the house. I didn't go through that window. Okay, I did go through that window. I didn't go all the way in. Okay, I did go all the way in. I never went into the bedroom. Okay, I did go into the bedroom. I never had any stolen stuff on me. I never actually took anything. Okay, I did. Over and over and over and over, lying and lying and lying. One part that really doesn't fit into this puzzle that's very confusing, and I think you'll find confusing when you're listening, is where's the gun? Where's the murder weapon? Darius Robinson has to know where it is. If you believe what he's saying, and you believe that he was with the person who shot Mr. Simpson in his home, he has to know where that murder weapon is. He was with whoever did it the entire time. Everyone in that neighborhood was trying to help. Police asked them to please look around your yards, see if you see anything, let us know if you find anything. Police were scouring that area, combing that area. They put divers in a person's pool looking for that gun. They put divers in the body of water there right underneath the bridge. Divers. They went to extreme lengths. Canines. They put dogs down to try to sniff, to try to track, to try to find that gun. And it makes no sense that they didn't find it. What makes sense is that Darius Robinson knows exactly what happened to that gun. That it went with somebody else. That it's somewhere else. That it wasn't dropped in that area. He sent them on a wild goose chase over there. When this crime happened, tips poured in. And there was a BOLO, and the officers will tell you what a BOLO means, which is a be on the lookout. And it's sort of this all points bulletin, be on the lookout for a white Oldsmobile that was parked underneath the bridge at the time of the crime, and it had 20-inch rims on it. And this BOLO went out and they were looking for this vehicle. And this is something that they want you to ignore at this point. They're not going to bring that up at this point. They want you to only focus on, well, somebody else saw a motorcycle. So ask yourselves, what about the other tips that were coming in? What about the other leads that they didn't follow up on? The police in this case were extremely concerned when this happened, as they should be. And they really didn't even sleep. This happened a Thursday night. The lead officer worked that entire evening, and he didn't get off until the next day at 5 p.m. I mean, they barely slept. And when they finally talked to Darius Robinson that Monday, when they finally talked to him, he says, the detective says to him, you know what, this is going to be the first night that I get a good night's sleep. Because that's the strange thing about this case, is that right when Darius Robinson implicated Mr. Jones and implicated himself, that's when the case was really closed in their minds. That alleviated any other concerns that they might have had or any other leads that they might have had. They were focused entirely on Mr. Jones at that point. There was forensic evidence found at the home. All of the scientifically reliable, conclusive evidence that was found in this case exonerates Mr. Jones. Okay, but by the time they get around to matching things up, he's already been arrested for it. They've already decided, they've already made a public announcement to the community that we got the guys. But there's a door, and I think the prosecution might actually bring this door into the courtroom. And it's going to be dramatic, I guess, to bring that in. But there's this door, the bathroom door in the case, where the two perpetrators are inside the bathroom, and Mr. Simpson is defending his home and going in there after him, and they're struggling over the door. On the door, the side of it where the two perpetrators would have been, inside that bathroom, on that door is a fingerprint. And that fingerprint doesn't match anybody in the Simpson family. That fingerprint doesn't match Darius Robinson. And most importantly for you to consider in this case, when you're thinking about whether or not there's reasonable doubt, it doesn't match Henry Jones. It is some unknown print, some unknown perpetrator somebody that was in that bathroom doing that crime, who isn't on trial and isn't coming in to testify against the person on trial. There's a couple other fingerprints found. The prosecution pointed out to you, of course, Henry Jones has a fingerprint on something that was in his own closet where he stayed at. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of debate as to whether or not he was in possession of stolen property in this case. And that's why we talked a lot about it during jury selection, about whether or not you could be fair if you know that that's one of the things that's going to come in during this case, is the fact he's in possession of some stolen property. So there's no fingerprints of Mr. Jones in the house, is the most important thing for you to consider. There's an unknown fingerprint in that house. But on this stolen property, Mr. Tyndall, the person who had his home burglarized about 3 weeks prior, there's this metal box that looks like a cash register box. And that's in Mr. Jones' bedroom. On that box, there's another unknown fingerprint that's not Darius Robinson's print, and it's not Henry Jones' print. It's an unknown person who has some involvement in possessing or touching or stealing this property. And so at the end of the day, you need to consider your common sense and think about whether or not it's possible in this case, or reasonable in this case, to think that it could be that Henry Jones is simply a fence, is simply helping Darius Robinson in getting rid of some stolen property. Think about whether or not Darius Robinson is all that believable, which he's not, when you count up all of his lies. The ones that he'll admit to, I think, will be about upwards of 45 lies that he will agree that he gave. Lies where he looks the officer in the face, straight in the eye, and says, I'm honestly telling you all that I can be, I'm being as honest as I possibly can. Insisting that he's being honest when he is telling bold-faced lies over and over and over and over. And I want you to think about, when you're listening to Darius Robinson, think about whether he's a person who's capable of lying to get whoever was actually involved off the hook. He'll tell you during this trial, and he said before, that he doesn't care about Henry Jones. All right, they're not close. He cares about other people. He cares about, and there'll be a number of different people named that probably won't even be brought in, but Kewan, this guy named Kewan Barnes. So that's another thing about Darius Robinson, is that when you're listening to him, you're going to start to see some suspicious things about him, some hidden truths that kind of slip out. For example, when the officers are questioning Darius Robinson when he's first arrested that Monday, he is being asked, obviously, where were you Thursday night? He knows it's the night of the murder. He says that he's with his friend Kewan Barnes. He says, I was over at Kewan's house. And then it's interesting because he insists over and over to the officer, call Kewan. Call him up, because he's going to verify to you that I was with him. So use your common sense and try and think about why it is that Kewan Barnes would already know that he's supposed to give a false alibi for Darius Robinson. And whether or not it seems as though Kewan is a little shady. Nike sneakers, okay? We'll concede. I mean, Henry Jones has Nike sneakers. He's wearing Nike sneakers. There's a lot of different Nike sneakers in this case. There's Nike sneakers in the Simpson home. There's Nike sneakers in Darius Robinson's house. There's Nike sneakers on another individual that they were suspicious of and had in for questioning, named Ronald. and you'll see his picture, I think, in this case, but they had a number of leads and were talking to a number of different people. He's wearing Nike sneakers. The only pair of Nike sneakers that they bothered to collect are the ones that belong to Henry Jones. There's nothing distinct about the bottom of the sneakers. Sometimes if a person might step in gum, or they step in a nail, or they've got a nail stuck in their shoe, they got a rock stuck in their shoe, something on the bottom of the shoe that's unique to that particular shoe. There's nothing unique at all about these sneakers. And if you look carefully enough at them, you'll see that they are inconsistent. And Mr. Hunt's going to bring that through Mr. Chapman, and we'll bring that up to you here at the end as well. That if you look carefully enough at part of the sneaker, it doesn't match. And the prosecutor's not saying that it matches because it doesn't match. They cannot say that. What Mr. Chapman, Mark Chapman's going to tell you is he's basically going to say that it's maybe, maybe not, it could have been. He says his ultimate findings are that the patterns look similar. And he goes on to say there is insufficient detail to make a more conclusive association. It's a maybe, maybe not. Mark Chapman's going to say something about glove print analysis, which is true junk science, okay? That there's a glove print found at the scene, and he's looking at a pair of gloves. First of all, there's a different pair of gloves that they rule out, but that's sort of beside the point. There's this pair of gloves that's found outside of Henry Jones' home on the front porch, I believe it was, where Darius Robinson admitted to being. Darius Robinson admits in one of his interviews that he had actually pulled this door shut. So it seems as though if you want to believe that the gloves that were found are connected to the pattern that's on the door, that it seems as though Robinson was the one that would have left it there. Robinson admits that he goes over to Jones's house. He clearly admits that he was over there. He has every ability to put the gloves down there. Robinson is a kid that was living with his mom and wasn't able to stay there in the time of this. The prosecutor told you that Darius Robinson doesn't have any deal on the table. That he's not doing this because he has some kind of set deal on the table. Keep your common sense in mind. Not yet. Okay? Not yet. Listen to what's told to Darius Robinson during the interview. What is it that gets him to want to talk? What is it that they tell him? The detective tells him, if you talk first, what happens to him, Henry, isn't going to happen to you. Darius Robinson is trying to get himself out of a life sentence. The detective tells Darius Robinson, do you want to talk to my prosecutor? He can make a deal with you. The detective then goes on to explain to Darius Robinson that the last case that he worked on, the person who talked ended up getting a break for doing so. So don't let them fool you and make you think that Darius Robinson isn't doing this because he's wanting to get a deal. These are the same two prosecutors that are prosecuting Darius Robinson. That's exactly why he's saying this. Think about whether or not, from Darius Robinson's standpoint, whether Henry is the most logical person for him to be pointing the finger at. He knows that Henry has the stolen property. He gave it to him. He knows that police already think that Henry is suspicious because they're in the neighborhood together and they're found there together several days later. the prosecutor wants to make a big deal about Henry Jones seeming to be untruthful. All right, so use your common sense in thinking about if a person is asked where they were last Wednesday night, last Thursday night, last Friday night, if they went out of town the next day, I mean, it's really not that probative of evidence if he says that he was out of town, because he was out of town afterward. The prosecutor keeps calling this suspected murder weapon, which they don't know if it's the murder weapon or not. They keep calling this firearm that was stolen from the Tyndall residence, they keep calling it a white-handled revolver. And you'll notice that they're not explaining to you the color of the barrel of the gun, because there's a strange inconsistency in their evidence there, because Mr. Tyndall says it's black, and Darius says that it's silver. It's just sort of a strange inconsistency. The motorcycle, the defendant, Mr. Jones, has a motorcycle. They want you to, and over in this case, they're going to ask you to leap to conclusions and speculate. All right? That's what they do with circumstantial evidence. He's lying, or he's asking Darius to lie to the police. He texts him and says, hey, could you tell the police that we were dropped off in that area? Don't let them know that we got there on that motorcycle. Okay? Henry Jones has a suspended driver's license. He doesn't want to be in trouble for driving a motorcycle. He actually gets arrested for driving the motorcycle, and then they tow it. All right, so it makes a lot of sense for him to try to distance himself from that motorcycle, not because there's some evidence of a crime in there that he's aware of, but because they towed it, they took it from him, and then he's in jail for driving without a license. They left that out. They left that out and explained that to you. Darius Robinson, when you listen carefully to what he says in his interviews and what he'll have to admit here in the trial, he is from Fort Lauderdale. His mother, for some reason, when he's first apprehended, is telling him that he should sit there and play stupid. Say you don't know nothing about nothing. Act stupid. Strange thing for the mom to be advising her son. The mom's boyfriend has a white vehicle that I think Darius just said, oh, it doesn't have rims on it, so I think that they just didn't bother to think whether or not this person could have been somebody involved. But ask yourselves again, is Darius Robinson a person capable of lying about who was involved? Is he capable of doing that? All right, is he capable of covering for somebody that he actually cares about? Because it wouldn't be hard for him to simply change the names of whoever was actually there and put Henry Jones's name in there. If he's going to go down for it anyway, why should somebody else? He doesn't care about Henry. And don't think he's not capable of it. This is a person who's admitted burglarizing houses. He's a thief, he's a liar, and he's a murderer. So don't think he's incapable of lying and implicating somebody in something that they didn't do. And on that point, we have a witness that we're going to present, Zach Luke. When I was talking to you during jury selection, I talked to you about whether you would be fair if a person has a criminal record. Zach Luke has a criminal record. Zach Luke is a criminal who was in the jail, in the county jail, and he was cellmates with Darius Robinson. He was his cellmate for about 5 months. And Darius didn't talk all that much to him about the case, but one time he made a statement. One time when Darius was reading through his paperwork about the case, he makes a statement, and Zach Luke will tell you what it is. These stupid-ass crackers don't know what they're talking about. Henry wasn't there when the guy got shot. All right, Zach Luke has nothing to gain in this. He's doing a prison sentence for his own crimes. He's actually losing game time by being here. He's losing something by being here. He's coming in here to tell you that Darius made this statement that Henry wasn't involved. And he's doing this because it's the right thing to do. All right, when a person does a prison sentence in the state of Florida, usually they don't serve 100% of their sentence, they serve 85% of their sentence. It's called game time, good behavior. Well, when you come back to the jail for something like this, the prison system actually forfeits some of that game time from you. And so he's losing. He's actually going to spend a longer amount of time in prison because he's coming here to testify for Henry Jones, because he cares, because it's messed up if somebody gets in here and lies and causes somebody to go to prison when they shouldn't. Darius can't say that he doesn't talk like that. I told you the statement, these stupid-ass crackers don't know what they're talking about. Henry wasn't there when the guy got shot. Darius does talk like that. He has this sort of act that he puts on for the officer, but when the officer leaves the room, he's still being recorded. Maybe he doesn't realize it, but he talks like that. He says crackers. He's saying that to whoever it is he's talking to over the phone. So he can't deny that, say that he's, this respectful young man who wouldn't talk in such a way. I'm going to ask that you take seriously, and I know that you will, your oaths that when you raise your right hand that you're going to follow the law. All right, you have to remain objective in this case. I'm going to ask that you don't speculate and jump to the conclusions that the prosecutor is asking you to jump to without there being actual evidence to back it up. I'm confident that when you make that objective assessment of the government's evidence in this case, you will find that they failed to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that Henry Jones is the killer, that Henry Jones was even in that house. And I'm confident that if you follow the law, you will acquit Henry Jones in this trial.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we generally do on most days is we try to take a mid-morning break and a mid-afternoon break. I do want to tell you that we have